Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Willie White, and I am an actor, a comedian, and uh, a working class fella. I suppose would be the best thing to say, Mark.
Could we get to all that? It's an absolute joy to have you on. And I suppose, in case people find this on the depths of the internet in years to come, just to kind of put in context, we're kind of speaking in a mad period of kind of not lockdown, nearly lockdown, opening up, not opening up as part of a global pandemic, but also chatting to you as one of a series of things that Axis are doing with other local partners as part of Ballymun does Recovery Month. So we kind of get to that. But I suppose the way I start out all these interviews with it is kind of when you were a kid, a young lad, looking back now, do you think you were kind of destined to be an actor or destined to be a comedian? Was it always in you, do you think?
I don't know whether I was always kind of destined for the stage, I suppose, in one form or another.
Yeah.
Because from a very early age, living in Ballymun, I was always in kind of talent competitions, and I liked to be kind of known. It was probably I liked to be popular, and yeah. So from a young age, I'd have been in the local talent competition just around the corner from Axis in the Virgin Mary School Hall, and I remember the first time I was on stage, I was miming to a song by a band called Shawaddy Waddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the song was called A Little Bit of Soap. And my sister, God be good to her, me only sister Susan, she was kissing me face because the song went A Little Bit of Soap will wash away the lipstick on my face. So I had my sister in the sides with me, kissing me and putting lipstick on my face, And I went down and I was brilliant. I was probably 6 or 7 years of age.
Wow.
Yeah, so kind of from that age,
And can you remember that? Can you still remember?
Oh, I can. You know what, Mark? I've got an amazing memory. I've got a really, really good memory. I can remember moving we lived in a place in Temple Bar called Crampton Buildings.
Yeah.
And I remember the Talbot Street bombing when we lived in there. And I remember the stuff hitting the floor. And I remember moving from Crampton Buildings out to Ballymun, and my mum does be looking at me sometimes and going, Jesus, that's so weird that you have a memory like that, but I do,
Because you would have been very young around that time.
Yeah, I think the Talbot Street bombings, if I'm right, was 73 or 74. If I'm right.
Yeah.
And I was only 2 or 3, Mark.
Yeah. Wow.
Very, very scary, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it just shows you, the Ireland that we all grew up in and how radically it's kind of changed. And also, the fact of Ballymun, where you kind of moved to, people kind of around that time moved here from all over the country. Like a lot of people came from the north, there was people coming from the inner city, and there was like, a real melting pot of different people.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ballymun is from 67. It's mad that you should say that because only earlier on I was looking at old photographs of Ballymun when the under tunnel was there, and when it was all the infrastructure was completely different. There's some people out there will never have remembered it like that or never to have seen it like that. And it was an amazing place, and it was, there were amazing times. I suppose there was great intentions for Ballymun, and whatever happened to them intentions, somewhere along the line, got lost or so whoever believed in them didn't believe in them anymore. And then unfortunately, things changed out there in the 80s with the drugs and that, and the place just took it took its own stamp in Irish society. Yeah. Any time I remember as a young lad applying for jobs, and my mother would get me to give someone else's address,
Yeah.
It was like that, and that's the stigma that Ballymun had,
And it's funny because you hear that, and people that are from here and work here kind of recognize that, but it's only when you really kind of dig down into that you realize, I mean, that fucking goes deep. I mean, if that's taken as like normal, Jimmy, if you're growing up and that's just normal life, that cuts.
Yeah, well, it made me question, kind of going, you know, is where I'm living really that bad of a place? Like, you know, I couldn't really see the bad in it, and it was, you know, and like no matter where I go to this day, and people ask me, you know, where are you from? Even though I tell them that I live where I'm living, I always say, but I'm from Ballymun.
Yeah.
I don't have any shame. I don't have any guilt. I don't have any remorse about the place that I grew up in. Like, and I mean, there's a lot of, like, you know, Mark, there's a lot of talented people and there's a lot of good people in Ballymun.
Yeah.
I mean, to name but a few, I mean, like, you know, the likes of Derek Lestrange, who is an artist who worked for Disney and who worked on SpongeBob SquarePants, who infamously put Ballymun on the train in SpongeBob. And I mean, then you've got the likes of you know, singer-songwriter Glenn Hansford.
Yeah.
You know, and like there's a lot of really, really good people that have come from there, like, you know.
And come here,
so
you're absolutely right. And I think for you, kind of, because I've chatted to you before, but like when you were growing up, then, like, performance is, you know, has always been a very natural. The arts is not like sort of when I came here first, it was like, you know, people forget as well. Like, Access was built because the community wanted one of the first things on the new main street of Ballymun was an arts centre, and that says a huge amount about what this place is about, you know, as a community, as an active place. And I think that sense of you kind of growing up then and getting into those, you know, your first mime performance, but I mean that quickly grew for you. I mean, didn't you kind of fell in kind of love with it? You kind of, I said, you really enjoyed that performance a bit.
Yeah, I did. It was, you know what? It was kind of an escape as well for me. Which I suppose at that age was a healthy kind of escape. I had a lot of stuff going on at home, you know. You know, and I don't feel kind of bad or anything saying about this, because I'm sure there's a lot of kids in the position now that I was in the position in back in the 70s, and my father, God be good to him, and I'm not running him down by any account. When I look back now and look at where my father came from and how he was reared and the environment that he was reared in, I've got to say he done a really good job with me and my sister. As much as I thought it was a nightmare, there was a lot of violence going on at home. My father drank, and later on in the years my mother drank, so there was a lot of violence going on at home. So the stage for me was somewhere in the early days to go and kind of get away from what was going on at home.
Yeah.
And even if it was only a song by Shawadi Waddy that lasted 4 minutes, you know, sometimes you didn't want the song to end because it gave you that escape route to forget about everything that was going on at home, like, you know.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, then I found solvents as a kid.
Right.
There was a lot of kids in the area who were sniffing glue, and there was a lot of kids that were inhaling gas, and I was very mischievous and I was very easily led, and I liked to run with the wrong crowd all the time. And I got into that, and that was then my escape from getting away, you know, from stuff that was going on at home. And it's like you hear people saying, you know, I was out of my head, and that's what drugs done for me. Like, they took me completely out of my head from all the everyday stuff that an 8 or a 9-year-old child should not be dealing with whatsoever, you know. And that's what I done. I tried to escape from it all the time, from what was going on.
And Will, what sort of age did that kind of what age did the kind of solvents become a thing, become an issue for you?
I would really realistically say about 8 or 9 years of age I started taking solvents.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, I look at my two daughters. I have a daughter that's 18 and I have a daughter that's 12 who'll be 13 on Saturday, and she's just so innocent. I mean, I just couldn't imagine my kids, you know, taking drugs like that. Come here, solvents are solvents, they're drugs, like. And they're very, very dangerous, like. I mean, the amount of kids that I knew growing up that had died from, you know, inhaling gas or taking tinners or stuff like that, you know, it happened, like, it kills people, you know.
No, it's you know, it's really interesting to kind of hear you speaking like that, because also, you know, when we talk about drugs and addiction and, you know, that kind of damage it can do to a person, you know, for people outside, they sometimes just see the issue or see the problem or see the crime or see whatever, but they very, very seldom see the trauma, you know, see the fact of, you know, you mentioned the arts being one way of escaping, but it's a way of escaping something. Like, you don't choose. Do you know what I mean? It's like and come here, because I remember hearing about you well before I met you around your performances in the comp.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I went to secondary school. I left Ballymun Virgin Mary, and I went to the Ballymun Comprehensive, and then they had the yearly play in there. So the first play they had was The Emperor's New Clothes, and I played Cipollino, believe it or not, the jester, which suited me down to a T because I was the ultimate class clown in school. I was just such a messer, and if I'd have done as much studying as I did messing in school, I could have went to Trinity. To be honest with you, it was a joke. And then we done Dodger, or we done Oliver, and I played Dodger in that.
Yeah.
And I ended up on Anything Goes. I got the footage of it there a while ago, and I look at it, it was amazing. Ended up on Anything Goes. And then I think the other play, I'm trying to think of the other play that we done off the top of my head. I think it was Grease or something like that. Yeah. No, it wasn't. It's Joseph and his Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I played the brother Dan in that.
Yeah, yeah.
He was the bad brother. You know, so they were 3 good years. But I mean, I had a terrible reputation in school. And I couldn't, when I went off to see Mr. Kilrain after them 3 years, I couldn't get into the senior side. Too much of your reputation has been a messer and been destructive and all that. And when I look back now, I mean, he was dead right not to take me.
But did you kind of, I mean, with, like playing, you know, those part, playing Dodger, saying Oliver, and a performance that's still spoken about in Ballymun anyway.
Yeah.
But like that takes, you can't just turn up and do that. There has to be a bit of work behind that. So I mean, were you able to focus there?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of work in it. And you know, obviously with a musical of that caliber and to have such a big part like Dodger was a great part, and the London accent, and you know, it was great. It was great to play it, and come here, some great people. Sean Delaney was actually Oliver, who'd be a kind of lifelong kind of pal of mine, and people I still remember from them plays that I see every now and again, and you kind of reminisce about it. And you know, some people go on to do other things, and some people, it's just crazy. I was 15 like when I left school, Mark, and I'd no idea at all of what I wanted to do. Like, pardon me French, I didn't know whether I wanted a shit or I didn't know whether I wanted a haircut.
Yeah, yeah.
And I ended up going to live in London when I was 16. You know, me and another a mate of mine, he'd be a lifelong friend of mine.
Yeah.
we went to London like for a few years, and that just all ended in disaster as well. Like, you know.
I mean, did you like? I mean, did when you're saying kind of, you know, having, you know, fallen into the wrong gang at 8 or 9 insolvents, and then kind of grown up being a messer through. I mean, there's messers and there's messers. Did you feel like you're kind of looking back now, the part of your life was out of control around that time? Do you kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, do you know what, Mark? It's like what you talked about 5 minutes ago. There was trauma. Like I was mentally scarred from my childhood, realistically, when I look back now. And I just talked to my partner there a few months ago about it a lot. They reckon a lot of addiction stems from trauma, you know, stuff that went on years ago and stuff that I hadn't dealt with and didn't know how to deal with. And the only way for me to deal with it was to suppress these horrible feelings by taking a substance in one form or another that kind of pushed it down for a while. You know, it was a short-term solution to a really long-term problem that I didn't know how to deal with, like, you know. Yeah. And maybe it would have been pushed in the other direction, you know, by somebody from school and said, look, would you not go into a drama class or go there? Or, like, who knows what would have happened? You know, it's Well, I hadn't got that guidance. And maybe even if I had the guidance, I probably wasn't open to it.
Yeah.
You know, sure, I knew everything. As a teenager at 15 years of age, you know, it's like my eldest daughter. I call her Google, like, because she knows everything. You know what I mean? It's the truth. Like, you can't tell anyone that's in the teenage years what's right or what's wrong. So they have their opinion and their beliefs, and you know, that's it. Like, so that's the way I was, you know.
Yeah, and were substances still an issue for you? Was it getting worse? Like, was it kind of?
Yeah, when I went to London, my mother and father had separated by then. They separated when I was about 16, and I went to live in London then, and it was like I took the handcuffs off from my whole family, and I was just kind of let run wild, so to speak, with nobody to answer to and nobody to, you know. And I mean, as well as that, back then there was no phones.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even have a house phone at home. Like, do you know what I mean? So I was really, really free. And when I landed in London, there was a lot of lads from Ballymun there, and where I was staying in Manor House, and it was just crazy. Like, the rave scene was kicking off over there, and Jesus, I thought I died and kind of went to heaven, so to speak, you know.
Yeah.
Taking ease and smoking. Like, it's mad. Young teenagers don't realise that it just doesn't. You don't just wake up one morning and go, "I'm going to take heroin" or "I'm going to take crack cocaine." It doesn't happen like that. There's a pathway to getting to that, you know, drug of choice or whatever it might be like. So that was my kind of thing. I kind of stepping stoned all the way to where I ended up with my addiction, you know.
Yeah.
Which was a horrible, dark, lonely, horrid place, like, you know.
And do you remember times, I suppose, as you say, it's like a river or a kind of journey, but I say from talking to people also, you kind of, I'd imagine there's points in that road where you're kind of going, fuck, I'm on this travelator now, or I'm on this, you know, you can see where it's going, but you're kind of, you're nearly too far gone to come back out, you know what I mean? You're on that road.
Yeah. Well, I went to London for a few years, and I ended up, through my own fault, I ended up in a psychiatric hospital over there through my drug use.
Yeah.
And a situation happened over there, and I ended up getting sectioned and put into an intensive care psychiatric unit for about 7 months. And if it wasn't, you know, and I could never see that drugs had led me to this place.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's how deluded I was and how blinded I was by my addiction. I could never see, you know, that the drugs and my actions were the problem, like, you know. I just thought, it's a bit of bad luck that I've ended up here, like, you know.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for my sister taking me back to Dublin after about 7 months, I firmly believe, Mark, and I mean, I firmly believe that I'd have still been in the psychiatric system, if not a hospital, maybe on a daycare thing at home, which I was when I come back to Dublin. And then I proceeded to do, when I got off all the tablets, my sister, I was on serious amounts of medication, like, and I got off all that, and then I done the same thing again, and ended up in another psychiatric unit over in Dublin. I ended up in Dundrum Central Mental Hospital, and then I ended up in Vincent's on the Richmond Road. And I was, you know, I don't know, talk about putting your hand in the fire 3 times and getting burned, like, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like doing the same thing every day and looking for different results, like, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what I done, like. So I'm very, very fortunate. I still see people, Mark, today that I was in St. Vincent's with, who are still in psychiatric care or day programs, so to speak. So I'm very, very lucky to have got away from that and to have walked away from that kind of thing. But then my addiction just took on another level, and I started. Sure, I knew the LSD wasn't doing me any good. Obviously, after 3 lessons, I've been in 3 different psychiatric hospitals. So I started taking opiates then, you know. And that was like the beginning of the end
Right.
for me, like, you know. And I knew that, come here, I knew the dangers of heroin, and I knew what heroin done, and I knew it killed people. And
Yeah.
but it's that cockiness, sure, it won't happen to me, like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It won't happen to, I am no different to anybody else that goes down the road
Yeah.
of using, you know, heroin or taking methadone or taking tablets or anything like that. It always, your destination, you'll always get to your destination, but your journey will probably be a little bit different than the other fella or the other girl, like, you know. And that's when all my big trouble kind of started, like, we're ending up in prisons and ending up, you know, doing stuff that you know, that I shouldn't have done, like stealing from my family and all that shameful, remorseful kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That goes with it, like, you know. I was just actually had a friend over to dinner tonight, and we were just talking about it. Like, he's 10 years clean in a couple of weeks' time, and we were just reminiscing about kind of his journey and where he was. And I remember one time going up and visiting him in Beaumont, and he had an abscess on his arm. He nearly lost his arm, like, you know. And this is the insanity of drug addiction.
Yeah.
He was sitting there and he nearly lost his arm, and I brought him up fish and chips. I remember sitting with him because my sister was upstairs, and then I dropped down to see him. And I was actually in recovery myself at the time, so I called down to see him, and he nearly lost his arm. And the day he got out of hospital, he went and used again. You know, it's just, I don't know. It's the power that a small little bag of powder can have over such a big person. You know, it's unreal. Like, it's frightening, Mark.
It's also as well. I mean, you spoke there about trauma, and you spoke there about, it's kind of like, you know, it seems from chatting to people, and you know, it's also that it can give you oblivion. You know, it can just take you away. So it's not, you know, so it's kind of, it's scarily not about you as a person. It's about you wanting to not become a person in some ways. You know what I mean? It's kind of to get out of that frame.
Yeah, it's you know what? I suppose if I would have sat down and read the small print before I start taking drugs, I because it stripped me of everything, Mark.
Yeah.
It stripped me of the person that I was. He was a really nice, kind, caring, considerate, loving, funny type of fella that, you know, genuinely, I'm not just saying it, would, you know, if I could help you out, I'd do it. Like, they've been the total opposite of all them things, you know. I'm doing things that I never thought I would do, like all the not yets, and I mean, you know, I ended up in homeless services. I ended up sleeping on the streets. I ended up begging on the streets. Then I ended up using intravenously, which I never thought that I would do. I was in prison. I was, you know, it was horrific stuff, the way I was using. Like, it was anywhere to try get a vein, and it was just savage, and I didn't know how to stop, and I didn't know anything about recovery.
Yeah.
And I thought my answer would be to get onto the Red Brick Clinic in Ballymun and get a methadone maintenance, and you know, that'd be the, you know, that'd be the, you know, be like the golden ticket for me, like, you know, which it wasn't, like, you know, it really wasn't. I'd done all that, and it was never enough.
Yeah.
You know, I always, it was kind of street drugs, and I didn't know anything about recovery. I didn't know anybody that was clean, or I didn't know anybody that was, you know, would kind of take me hand and go, look, you don't have to be doing that. Like, there's a way out. Like, because my whole surrounding and my whole friends, well, I say friends very, very loosely, you know, were all using, and it was, they weren't friends. They were just people that I used drugs with, and you know, if I could get something off them, I'd take something off them, or they'd take something off me. And then there's all the, you know, he's this and she's this, and the skullduggery that kind of goes, and losing beautiful people along the way. Like, you know, I was actually over walking in, over by the Messville Hotel there a couple of weeks ago, and I walked by a tree, and a girl that I used to use with, I'm not going to name her, she's from Santry. and she got stabbed to death about 19 years ago. She owed lads a few quid for money, and I just kind of thought to myself, do you know what? But for the grace of God, like that, I'm still here, and I'm still alive. And sometimes I get, I kind of reflect about it, and I get a little bit emotional, and I get a little bit upset, and it's all right.
Yeah.
I'm very, Mark. I am very, very, very lucky to be sitting here, and I'm very, very lucky to be alive. And I mean that. I know you hear people saying, "Oh, I should have been this." I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be on with the stuff and the way I used in my past. I shouldn't be on this earth. Like, I genuinely and sincerely mean that.
And was there? Well, for one, and I'm not only one. I'm glad you are. But was there? I mean, you made two things there, Willa, that are spoken about a lot and need to be the kind of that. It's very hard to see any light when all your surrounds are, keeping you in the same bubble. When your friends or when your social structure, whatever it is, when your life is that. But what can you remember moments when kind of chinks started to come in? Was your journey back? Was your recovery?
Yeah. I think. No, not that I think. I know. I went on the run. I had a drugs charge hanging over my head. And my mother, who I'd said earlier on had separated from my father, she lived in London. So I went to London, and that's when things really, really started to fall apart for me. I went there with the same thing as I talked about Ballymun with the developers. It was great intentions for me going to London. And my dad gave me a few quid going over, and I knew the minute I got off the plane that I was going to King's Cross to score, like. And every penny that I had, I ended up meeting a girl by the name of Billy, was her name, and we smoked crack for the whole night. And I ended up going to my mum's the next day and telling my mum that I got robbed and that I'd no money. And this is just the addiction thing. And my mum may as well have said, yeah, well, look, just hang on for a minute till I land this helicopter and I'll speak to you, because she knew, like, and I had an abscess on my hand that was huge, and I was very, very underweight, and I had no drugs left, and it was like, this is the end of the world. And I remember going to the Whittington Hospital up in Archway, and with a note from the clinic for methadone, and he lanced the abscess on my hand, and they gave me 30 mils of methadone, and I literally thought I'd won the lottery. And that's how sad and how pitiful and how horrible that my life was at that time, like,
Yeah.
And that continued for a couple of years, Mark. Like, my poor mother, like, I went over, my mother was living a pretty normal life until I turned up on the scene over there, like, And eventually it all fell down like a deck of cards, and I ended up getting extradited home from London to face the music for the drugs charge that I had at home. And another time in my life where I thought that was the end of the world as well, like,
Yeah.
And I went to Brixton prison for 6 weeks. I was very, very sick. I was very, very underweight. And a real self-centered stuff, like, everything was about me, Gosh, don't worry about me mum who, see me getting taken out of a pub by armed police or all that type of stuff, It's just, addiction is just so self-centered, and it's all about me every day, like, So I never thought about anybody else. So I ended up going home to face the music, and I got 5.5 years in Mountjoy. And I got a review after 3.5 with terms and conditions that I gave clean urines, and I tried to do something about my addiction. Which obviously I said I would, in the court. And I went back to prison. I was clean going back into prison, Mark. I was completely drug-free when I went back to Mountjoy jail. And that lasted, I don't know, for probably about 3 or 4 weeks. And then before you know it, I'm using again intravenously in the prison, using a syringe after God knows how many people who've used it. And unfortunately, ended up contracting hepatitis C through me using and that. And come here, just stuff that you wouldn't do to a fucking dog, Mark. I'd put myself through, you know.
Then,
And
where did you find the strength then with it? I mean, where, like
do you
that's
know what, Mark? I'll tell you what happened. Funny enough, a mate of mine was going to 12-step meetings in prison, and he said to me, "There's a meeting on," he said, "of a Wednesday night. Come on up here." He says, "It's great to give out cigarettes." That was his introduction for me to this 12-step program. So I went up and they did. They gave out cigarettes, and I started kind of, some weeks I wouldn't go up, some weeks I would go up. And then I seen guys who I used with outside who were coming up and sharing their experience, strength and hope. And I was kind of a little bit intrigued then, kind of going, what's going on here? There's something going on, because these were guys that I would have used with on the streets, that I would have been locked up with, that I would have been on clinics with, who done all the stuff that I had done.
yeah,
But yet they looked an awful lot more healthier. They looked an awful lot more happier. And they had their own houses, they had their own cars, and I was attracted to that. I said to myself, you know, if they can do that, I can do that. So I then asked a prison officer who I knew inside, who my ex-partner would have babysitted for. He said to me, "Look, if there's anything I can do for you, let me know." And I just got a day one day, and I just said, it was coming to about 9 months left of the sentence, and I knew that if something didn't change, Mark, that I was going to end up back in there, or I was going to end up in a hole in Glasnevin Cemetery. So I took that leap of faith one day, and I walked up the landing, and I can still remember it today. Officer Mark Farrell, he won't mind me mentioning his name, because he was very beneficial in my recovery. And I walked up the landing to him, and I felt that the whole prison was looking at me walking up, which they weren't. And it's that whole self-centered thing again. And I just went up, and he kind of knew. He says, "Me, what can I do for you?" I says, "Mark, I need help." And he was like, "Well, it's about time, isn't it?" He says, "Look," he says to me, "What do you want to do? What's the plan?" I says, "I want to do a detox. I want to go over to the medical unit." I says, "And then I want to go to the training unit, which is a drug-free place." I says, "And I want to try get my life back together." He goes, "Right." He says, "Look, I'm glad that you asked." He says, you know, because he couldn't have done anything for me, you know. I wasn't ready at the time. And so he made a few moves, and he made a few phone calls, and I went for the interview for this place. Now, he told me beforehand, because it was very hard to get there. He says, "Me, look at, you're in." He says, "Don't say nothing to no one." And so I went over to the detox unit, and it kind of all just started from there. That was the beginning of it. And then I went to the training unit on Glengarriff Parade, and I started going to these meetings that were going on, and I started sharing, and I started kind of, you know, coming a little bit around to myself, and I just knew. I said, I've had enough of this. Like, I was battered and bruised, and, you know, I was still mentally tortured by my past and where I'd been. And like, there's some days it was just overwhelming. And so I got out. I eventually got out in 2001, and I drank that night. I went out with my dad, which I shouldn't have. But I knew the next day when I got up that I had to make a serious change in my life. And I remember a guy saying to me, he says to me, "Willie, there's one thing you've got to change." He says, "and that's everything." And I found that very, very hard to digest. But I started going to these meetings, Mark, and Jesus, my life just changed, like, you know, it really, really did. I surrendered, I gave in, I put the white flag up, and I embarked on this amazing journey called recovery. And it's you know, sometimes I have to pinch myself. I can honestly say that if I died tomorrow, if something happened to me tomorrow, that I would die a very, very happy man, knowing that the last, you know, good few years. Well, come here, I'm nearly 19 and a half years clean, like, you know, which is, come here, and I have to hear myself saying that. And it's, come here, recovery has been very, very tough as well. Like, you know, I've had times in recovery, like, I lost my sister, who was very near and very dear to me, and and I lost my father in 2016, and I've had stuff that's went on, and there's been relationship stuff, and not only just like with my ex-partner, but I mean with people along the way, and that has, life on life's terms stuff, Mark, stuff that, that ordinary people probably would go if they're having trouble, go and have a drink,
Yeah.
And I'm total abstinence. I don't drink, I don't use, and no matter what happens in my life, I've learned a valuable lesson that I just don't pick up. That I go through the feelings, I go through the emotions, I deal with it, and I work a 12-step program to the best of my ability, and just try live my life. Come here, I'm not the Dalai Lama, or I'm not this spiritual guru or anything like that, but I know the difference between right and wrong. I am that loving, caring, kind person now. I try help other people as much as I can that need to dig out. I let people know in Ballymun, if I see them that I used with, that look, there is a way out.
Yeah.
There's my phone number. If you're thinking of getting clean, I've got connections in treatment centres. I can do it for you. And come here, Mark. It's the biggest step that any active drug addict will ever take in their life, is to go and get clean.
Yeah.
But I can tell you one thing: it's the most beneficial, life-changing thing that you could ever do. And I mean, it's not only for me, Mark. Everybody benefited when I got clean. My mother, I remember my mother saying to me when she came home from London that winning the lottery would not give her the feeling that she gets to see me clean and sober, and that means an awful lot,
I mean, it's such a wonderful thing to hear you kind of speak about it as well, with it, because there's kind of, you've mentioned people who haven't gone through that, and kind of, that you mentioned things that happen to everyone in their life, but what people forget sometimes is you never had that normality at all. Do you know what I mean? For different reasons growing up, and then from substance abuse and on to kind of harder drugs, you never had that grounding in life until you can. So coming clean is not just, it's about changing the whole lifestyle as well as giving up drugs.
Yeah, do you know what, Mark? I feel like that I only really, excuse me, I just get a little bit emotional. I only started to live and started to grow up when I come into recovery.
Yeah.
I only started to develop as a person. I only started to not really find my character, but find out who I really am, what I really like. I'm not going around putting masks on anymore, pretending to be this person or that person for other people. And yeah, I feel in some way I was robbed of my childhood, so to speak. And I'm not in the blame game.
I hear you.
Listen, the parents that you get in life is a lottery, and it's crazy because when you looked at my family from the outside, my father had a really good job, my mother had a really good job, myself and my sister had really nice things growing up. We wore nice clothes. I had a nice bicycle when I was a kid, and all that stuff. It looked pretty normal, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I was starved of love and affection as a child, I really, really was. And I would much rather be in the house where the kids had nothing and had no clothes and no material things, but had what every child deserves: a bit of love and a bit of affection. And we just didn't have it,
Yeah.
But I understand now, recovery has given me the ability to be able to sit down with my father and find out what it was like for him growing up.
Yeah.
And why it didn't happen. And with my mother as well, stuff that happened to, my mother years ago, there was no,
yeah,
sexual kind of stuff around like that with my mother and my father, but just kind of listening to where they came from and the background and what it was. And then, I kind of go, well, look, I learned to accept and I learned to love the two of them unconditionally, and kind of go, look, they done their best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They done their best, and I made my own decisions somewhere along the line, and I just got lost, Mark. That's what happened.
I mean, I think just what you're saying there, is worth reiterating again, because again, it's forgotten in all policies and an awful lot of talk about, working class areas, or criminality, or whatever, is like that generational kind of effect of poverty, of whatever it is, trauma, of what that kind of, it's not just about snapping your fingers and everything's grand. There's massive choices that you had to make as an individual then, and with it, I mean, what's fascinating then though is, you not only did that, but then you started going, okay, you started then, let's get into comedy, and and let's get it, like, where did that now? That's
Come here. Do you know one of my first performances, believe it or not, was in the Axis with Christy Moore.
Really?
In the Ballymun choir, sung with Christy Moore. I was in the choir.
Right.
It was probably only about a year clean. And there was another guy in the choir with me who was in recovery as well. But it's mad. You talked about addiction just there. I'm just going to touch on something, and then I'm going to jump into what.
You're grand, yeah.
Like, it's mad because it's crazy, Mark, because addiction does not differentiate about who you are, where you're from, what religion you are, what sex you are, anything. Of addiction, if you end up in addiction, no matter whether you're from Foxrock or Blackrock or Ballymun or Finglas or Coolock, the results for the individual a lot of the time is always the same, And I look at the likes of that girl, that model that died of drugs, and God bless poor Jerry Ryan, and these, celebrities, so to speak, that have ended up, the likes of Amy Winehouse. But I mean, how many people from Ballymun, from, working class areas, have ended up doing that? Just get a small column in the death column in the paper, like,
Yeah.
Oh, and it's crazy, like, and well, look, that's life, and that's kind of how it goes. I'm gonna jump forward. So yeah, the Axis thing. I done an album in prison. I didn't do an album myself. We done a thing for the Barrettstown gang.
Yeah.
With a very, very talented man called Jerry Hendricks. He was the music teacher in Mountjoy. And I done a song on the album, and it was great. And it was, music was a great escape for me. I love singing, and recovery is kind of a strange thing, Mark, that you kind of recover a lot of the stuff that you really liked doing before you got caught up in the drugs. And I really liked singing, and I really liked performing. And I done a couple of plays in Mountjoy as well. I done the Borstal Boy, a Bernard Bean play, and I done I played Scalaro and that, and then I played Flute or Good in the Plough and the Stars, and we had the Gate Theatre come in, who were doing it at the time. They come in and watched us doing it, and I was talking to the director, and the director was like, Jesus, we were blown away, not only by me, but by everybody involved.
Yeah.
And it was crazy, because I'd say 70% of the cast were all drug addicts, like, when you think about it, But we took the roof off with the playing and that. So, yeah, so the music thing was always there. And so when I come into recovery, I got the chance to sing with Christy Moore, which we did. We went in and done that. And then, other things started to happen. And then, obviously, with the Joy in the Hood thing with Des, who I'm forever grateful for, and, who'd be a good friend of mine. I don't see him so much anymore because he's back living in the States, and that gave us the leg up, to get on the Join the Hood thing on RTE. And then yourselves in Axis and Ballymun were very, very, I mean, Jesus Christ, Mark. I mean, some of the shows we had on in Axis in Ballymun, I mean, one that always springs to mind, well, there's two actually in particular. One was the one Tommy Tiernan done, where the girl was talking about her mother having the stroke in the audience. And it's crazy because Tommy Tiernan done that show for us 3 times, Mark.
Yeah.
And he loved that gig. And he never charged us a penny for doing the gig, right? And then the other one, which I thought was brilliant as well, was Sarah Millican.
Yeah.
I mean, we fucking Sarah Millican, like, I mean, you wouldn't get Sarah Millican now, to do something of that caliber, like,
No, I remember.
Great nights there, like.
Well, it is funny. I was talking to someone who's kind of new here recently about them, and I was kind of chatting through, with yourself, Eric, and Dean, and kind of going, thinking, what? So yeah, these 3 lads, and they did join the Hood, and then they set up a comedy club here, and But I remember nights down there at side stage. One night particularly when Andrew Maxwell's set went on for fucking ever, and but the whole play, but you couldn't stop. It was just it had a life of its own, and you know I think. Well, what was brilliant though about it was, and I'll come back to Joy in the Hood in a minute. What was brilliant about it was kind of came from it. You could feel it. You could feel it being authentic, and that's a very overused word, but like it kind of for me it kind of christened the special vibe in that room down there. Do you know what I mean? It kind of had. It didn't matter it was Sarah Milliken or Tommy Tiernan. It was still 200 people sitting in front of them wanting to be entertained. And it was your house. Do you know what I mean? You were inviting these people to your house.
Yeah, do you know what, Mark? I'll be straight up. Like we are forever grateful to the likes of yourselves, you know, and all the staff and Access for everything that was done for us. I mean, you bent over backwards. And I know for a fact, if we got a meeting together, me, Dean, and Eric again, that yous would pull out all the stops for us to do something again. And that's the great thing about Access. And I'm not saying that you should only do that for me. You said that good in the community. You pull it out for everybody. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and especially anyone from the community at all that wants to do something or, you know, or wants to put something on. And I mean, you have everything in there. You tick all the boxes. You do things for kids. You do things for teenagers. You do things for adults. You do things for old folks. And it's a real, like the Access to me is it's the heart of Ballymun, and that's my personal opinion. Do you know what I mean? It's come here, the stuff that's went on the stage in there. I mean, theatre productions and comedy and you know poetry nights, and then we had the recovery thing last year, which was great. I mean, the likes of Emma Kiernan went on there last year, and it was like, Jesus Christ, like.
But can I ask you? Because there's two things there. Because I mean, there's been a lot of special nights here. One, we're jumping forward now, but one was when you brought the examination with Broken Talkers out here, a couple of years back.
Yeah.
Jesus, it was like the feckin' All Ireland. I had people texting me the days before going, "Any tickets left? Any tickets?" And they were gone. You couldn't get it.
No, Mark. I was actually blocked. We could have easily done 2 nights, I think, you know.
Could have done a week.
I think it was crazy as well, not only for me, but I'm sure for yourself to watch me in a completely different light.
Yeah, it was.
Completely different. Because I remember my nephew was sitting there and Matthew Carney came in and sat down beside him. I know Matthew since I'm a kid. He's a lovely guy, and he said, I've been looking forward to this all week. He says, a bit of comedy. And my nephew looked at him and says, what? He goes, this is going to be great crack, isn't it? And my nephew goes, no, I don't think you. He says, you don't know it. He goes, yeah, will I? He says, pleading, examine it. He goes, no. He says, it's a play. He says, it's a little bit dark. And it was mad because my nephew, Darren, the eldest lad, he'd never seen it until that night. And the same thing with my partner Linda. Even when I was doing the lines for it, and it's mad how that came about, Mark, because Jerry Hendricks, the music teacher in Mountjoy, was very instrumental in landing me that piece, because the lads were doing research in Mountjoy with lifers, as well as Dr. Catherine Cox, the criminologist, and they happened to say to Jerry Hendricks, we're looking for somebody to do it. It was meant to be a one-man play, was what it was meant to be. And they says, would you recommend anybody? And he says, well, off the top of my head, he says, if I was to recommend anyone, he says, I recommend this guy that was in here. He says, a fella called Willie White. He says, he's very funny. He's a good lad. And he showed them the video that we made in Temple Bar when I was doing the music video for the song, which, Jesus, when I think about it, the guy that was in the video with me only got buried about 3 months ago. A friend of mine, Paddy Scanlon, who died from active addiction. God love him. He was a lovely fella. So we they came and kind of sought me after this and asked me to go and do this piece. And I didn't know what it was about, where it was going to go, what was going to happen. Only that they were doing this piece that was me, kind of, it was all meant to be voice distortments of me kind of talking to myself from my past and that. But it wasn't working, Mark. So they got Gary Phelim and Gary says, look, I'll jump in and read. And whatever happened, it just seemed to work. So the whole arrangement and the whole menu just changed.
Yeah.
And Phelim says to me, what do you think of this? And I was like, listen, I says, I actually like this. I said, I'd much rather have someone on the stage to bounce off with than to be kind of left on my own. And it's mad, Mark, when I'm just thinking about it now, because I've had a couple of instances that the whole Joy in the Hood thing was all meant to be about me in the beginning.
Right.
It was meant to be about me getting out of prison and embarking on the world of stand-up comedy.
Okay.
That's what happened. And me and Des talked about this. And I says to Des, I can't do this, because I'd have been branded as the criminal, drug addict, comedian and all that. So as tough as it was for me to say I couldn't do it, I didn't do it. And it turned into something else, which was really, really good. And the same with the examination. When that happened, I thought that I was going to come in and these guys would have a script written. So basically what happened was, we went in, they said, listen, we've got kind of the lines of what we want to do, but we want to talk to you for a few weeks and get a few stories off you. And if you don't want us to use anything, he says, we won't use it. You know, if you feel uncomfortable with something. But you know what? I found that for me, Mark, and I'm sure as you watching it, everything that was in that play was real. That was regarding me. It was very moving for me. But it was also very therapeutic for me as well. I brought the governor of Mountjoy to see it. He was retired now. And not John Lonergan, a guy. It's mad, Marcus. This guy is actually from Ballymun, who ended up being a governor of Mountjoy. And I'm from Ballymun, who ended up being a prisoner of Mountjoy. And he came to see it. I brought friends of mine to see it that actually cried after it. They got very touched by it and very involved in it, because it's a very, very raw, very close to the bone piece of theatre. And do you know what? I've got to say, I feel a little bit robbed, like most of the artists this year, with what's going on. This should have been a really, really big year for us. And it didn't happen like that. But I have no doubt that, please God, you know, when things start to get up and running again, that we will. We got word from Australia where we were going, that they're having an Australian year next year. So it's all Australian acts. And they want us there in 2022.
Yeah.
You know, and we were meant to be in the Paris Theatre Festival in March. They want us back as well. I mean, we went to Edinburgh and we had people who come and see this play. And people were just fucking blown away by it, Mark.
But it's funny because I couldn't make the night here. So I saw it in Project.
That's right, yeah. I was speaking to you after, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember like knowing Broken Talkers work for years. I was fascinated, and have been speaking to kind of get Gary about it. So I was fascinated to see and knowing you. But I think yes, all those things, and from knowing you, the therapeutic level, the rawest level, but it was also very. You could see a very beautiful piece. You could see it was very still. There was a stillness there in you that was just fucking extraordinary. You know, the performance, it was as far away from anyone that was coming, anyone to Willie White show could ever imagine. Do you know what I mean? That's.
Yeah, it was, Mark. It was amazing. Do you know what? My mother wanted to come and see it, and I couldn't let her come to see it. Because I know it would have opened a wound for her, and you know, even especially the stuff about talking about my sister, and you know, just stuff like that, you know, and stuff that I've been through, that I just didn't want to expose myself to my mum, so to speak, and let her see that kind of stuff. But I mean, even the awards, like when we done the Fringe and we went in and we won Best Production, and it's mad because. And then I won Best Performer of the Dublin Fringe Festival. And it was crazy because on the Sunday morning when I woke up, Mark, I genuinely forgot about it. And my partner says to me, this thing is on tonight for the Fringe Festival in Whelan's. Are we going to go? And I went, yeah, sure, we'll go in, like. And I've got to say, like, I've never been involved in a theatre festival of any kind of thing at all. And I've got to say, the amount of shows that was on in that, and I mean good shows, with actors and performers who have been crafting you know, their trade and doing what they're doing for years. In one sense, I felt a little bit guilty. I suppose is the right word to use. But in
But with it, like, you know, just not interrupting you, but just to kind of share something with you, you know, you were crafting that performance for many, many years. And I think it showed just the joy. I mean, you mentioned the word joy. It showed the, you know, the bleakness of what you've been through, but also the openness of you as a person to be on that stage, you know.
yeah, even though I said I felt a bit guilty about it, when they mentioned my name for best performer, I knew by the roar and the round of applause that there was nobody in that room begrudged me.
No. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think
For the part that I played, you know.
yeah, but also, I think what's very important for you as a man and as a performer, like, you played that part in a technical way that was beyond also what you'd been through as a person. Do you know what I mean? It was one thing, obviously, having had the experience of that to kind of play with, but your performance of itself, do you know what I mean, was kind of, it wasn't just about Willie who has had all these experiences and is now telling us about them. It was a very, very, you know, very beautifully crafted performance as well.
Yeah, you know what? I have to say, Mark, Phelan and Gary, not only Phelan and Gary, but everyone. I mean, the lad that done the graphics, the lad that done the sound, Sarah that done the costumes, and everybody that was involved in it. I mean, fucking hell. I mean, I was truly and utterly blessed that I had all these people there, and Phelan and Gary were just amazing and so easy to work with. But I told him from the beginning, I says, look at, I says, I've got a full-time job. I says, but what I will tell you is, I says, I'll give you 110%. I says, I'll commit to this. I says, I'm very passionate about it. And I showed. And I mean, even then we won the Irish Times Best Production Award out of 600 theatre. You know, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like, you know, I just couldn't. And like, even with winning the Dublin Fringe thing, Phelan says to me, you're now an award-winning actor, like, you know? And I was like, wow, it's mad. And then I got an agent after that as well. But do you know what, Mark? I'm a firm believer in that. What's meant to be for you in life isn't going to pass you by, like. You know what I mean? And if I get it, well and good. And if I don't, I hope the person who gets it really has a blast doing it and has a great time. And that obviously they're the person for the part, like, you know.
Well, I won't keep you for much longer, but I just want to ask you to skip back a bit to, because you're one of the funniest men as a comedian that I've ever seen. I mean, you've done something here to a full theatre, but you've also done our staff party where you nearly fucking destroyed us. But what does that give you? I mean, what's that sense of being on stage as a comedian? Is that still a buzz to you?
Oh, do you know what, Mark? Come here. I love it. Of honest to God, I love it. There's nothing better than having the gift. Come here, we all know funny fellas, like, you know. I work with fellas who are just hilarious, like. But there's been hilarious, you know, in front of 3 or 4 fellas. But then there's been hilarious in 300 or 400 people, and be able to have that gift and get up on stage and have a bit of crack and have no badness. And I mean, some of the stuff that happened in the Axis, like, will never happen again on stages anywhere, you know, around the country. And I mean, it's great that you were there to witness it and see it. I love it. I love performing. I love comedy. I love, you know, I've grown to get a love for the arts now, and to see actually what goes into a performance, not only for the actor, but for everyone that's behind them. You know, like for the stage manager, Barry, that we had, and, you know, all these amazing people, like, and it's a lot of hard work, like, you know. But I love, like what you said, I love performing. I'm a bit nervous at the moment because I haven't performed in months. And I'm you know, I'm meant to be on in the Laughter Lounge on the 25th and the 26th of September. and that will be nerve rattling. But you know what, Mark? I feel that I've got so much more to give. I've got so much more to write. I'd really like to do a one-man play, probably about myself and about my life. And I don't know whether you could throw a bit. I think there is humour in the dark times in life as well, that we look for a bit of laugh, like, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe see what's happening. But yeah, I'm really at home when I'm on stage. I'm really comfortable. And come here, Mark. The place is miserable fucking enough, man. We all need a bit of laugh. Like.
Well, you've said it there. Come here, before I let you go, just because this will be going out as part of Ballymun's recovery, and a brilliant community effort about people, you know, shining the light on people who have made that step forward and kind of made the journey, you know, and kind of, you know, are on a process of getting there, or kind of have kind of reached there and kind of sustain themselves there. But what like, if there was, like, what does recovery mean to you, Will? Like, what kind of, you know, if there was, not a message, but if it kind of, like, looking back now, like, you know, when did you know that you were kind of had one foot in front of the other in the way that you wanted it?
Well, do you know what, Mark? Recovery for me is the freedom to start again. Like, you know, look, come here. We all have, you know, ghosts in the closet, and we've all done stuff or whatever. But I mean, I think once you give up the drugs, and it's mad, because I'd like to tell anybody watching this that the help is there. Like, the help is there now more than ever if you want to get clean. If you're sick and tired, you've been sick and tired, and you don't want to use, and you don't want to take, you know, I'm sick of hearing lads going, "Oh, I'm on methadone for the rest of my life." You're not.
Yeah.
You're not, like, you know, if you want to get clean, you can get clean. Age is only a number. I've seen people get clean in their 60s. I've seen people get clean in their teens or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're sick and tired, I've been sick and tired. Recovery is an amazing journey, Mark.
Yeah.
I know people who've come into recovery who came from nothing and are barristers, like.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, the sky is the limit. You can literally just reinvent yourself and become the person that you always dreamed that you wanted to be. Like, anything is possible. Like, you get what you settle for in life, but you also get what you settle for in recovery. Like, you know, I'm just glad that I'm back, that I'm a productive member of society, that my family and my friends around me are happy, and first and foremost, Mark, that I'm happy. Like, because it comes for me. I've had some dark times in recovery where things have been kind of all over the place, but I've got to say the sunshine is out a lot more than what the rain is. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah, recovery just means it's just the freedom to start again and start a new beginning, wipe the slate, and get your life back in order, like, you know, the life that you always wanted.
Well, just for me, just thanks very, very much. It's a great pleasure knowing you. You made me laugh, and you've actually made me spill tea all over myself on occasion as well. But also, you've just spoken so beautifully for the last hour. I'd like to really thank you for kind of sharing this as part of Recovery Month, and also long may it shine, buddy. You know, I think it's been great to chat to you.
Mark, thanks so much, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And you know that yourself, anything I can do for you or anyone in Ballymun, giving a little bit back or whatever, I'm always up for it, you know.